It's 4 o'clock, folks. I know there's a little conversation about whether Brian was or wasn't going to come and present, but we finally arrived at a decision. He's going to give us a brief and succinct and direct summary of his proposal, looking forward to various economic issues facing the town of Littleton.
Where would you like me to sit?
I would like you to sit right here. I'm going to just move, and you can have the stage.
Good afternoon. Approximately 2 months ago, I was at a meeting with Carrie, and she made a reference that what are we going to do about Lakeway? And that reference, initially my first response was, what's this wee bit Kemosabe? And what are we going to do? So what I did was then, with input from a lot of people, develop a proposal which is called, I think you may have copies of it, Littleton Together. And one of the things to be aware of is that the $20 million bond, or whatever variation we have, will be the largest bond that we've ever had. Sure. And it's twice the size of the high school renovation bond and the CTC middle school bond together. And approximately $6 million is the largest bond the town's ever done for anything, which is the high school, and I believe also the Moore Dam bond was around $6 million. So it's a huge lift to be able to pay for that. So anyways, what I put together was what I call Littleton Together 2023 Community Agenda, and I announced part of it at the Economic Development Celebration. And on the first picture you can see to become a $1 billion town, that to be able to pay for our new school, we got to grow our tax base. In 1995, we started our economic development efforts on a broader scale. The industrial park was well underway in 92, but by 95 we'd got the ball rolling. So that was kind of a base year. By 2009, we had tripled it to 794. The recession hit, dropped to 718 in 2017, and now we're back to 814 this year, which is the largest the town's ever had. So it's definitely doable within a 5-year period. The next slide sheet is one of the ways that we hope that I think we can achieve that goal, because we've done it before. An industrial park expansion. Our model in Littleton is not to recruit businesses from outside the park, outside the area. 12 of the 17 businesses were existing businesses. Eddie Hennessy's here. They were in multiple locations before going to the industrial park with a coin company and 11 other businesses. So what happens is we have businesses that grow and they go in the park. The industrial park was a $4 million project. Taxpayers 9 separate times for a cumulative total invested $1 million. And by the end of this month, we're going to know whether for the first time ever we hit $2 million in revenues for taxes, electric, water, and sewer. The industrial park available land for development is 230 acres, according to a study done by Horizon Engineering. About 158 of that is developable. In 2016, the Water Lake Department, the town, and LIDC joined revenues and came up with $40,000. They got a $40,000 EDA grant, and Horizon Engineering was brought in to study it. In 1998, under Paul McGoldrick's leadership, we received an EDA grant of $1.5 million, and the town kicked in around $95,000, I rounded it up, which ran the infrastructure for the industrial park expansion from the industrial park access road all the way to the Lisbon town line. So the infrastructure is all there, ready to go. We just got to plug into it. There are approximately $5 million worth of grants that could be used to expand the industrial park. They're historic grants that we've had before. So that's one option to help grow. The next one is Littleton Brands. From 1920 to 1980, brands dominated Main Street. We had J.J. Newberry's, Woolworths, First National, A&P, Chevrolet, Ford, Oldsmobile, all of your major oil companies. But starting in the 60s, those brands started leaving Main Street, and by 1992, we had 17 vacancies on Main Street and 0 brands. So what ended up happening was brands went somewhere else, and we didn't replace them for a while. One of the things I'll pass out to you if you don't already have is currently in Littleton we have 90 brands, a little over, maybe 92, 93. They go all the way from Applebee's to Walmart. By 2023, with the Buxton Group that the town has formed a partnership with, they're a consultant with a specific talent to recruit brands, we could be up to 2023, and that would help us grow our tax base. The next item of where we would have to make commitment again to grow our tax base is continue to do what we've done with the Main Street and River District. Our downtown area, we've become the millennial capital of the North Country. Those of you who saw our town, the proposal, the presentation on New Hampshire Public TV, that was done. We were selected as the town for the first one to be done because we were the town that was reversing a trend, or had reversed a trend that was happening in New Hampshire. All over New Hampshire, our communities are getting older. Littleton is getting younger, and who are becoming in is millennials. Now, why are they coming? In the last year and a half, 16 housing units have been built or renovated in the downtown area. They can fill them as quick as people get in. It's our entrepreneurship zone, whether it's Chudder's, the Village, Little Village Bookstore, Schillings, Fido's, long time. We've got a lot of local anchors. We have lots of icons. I think you have Cobb. The downtown area is also our tourism catchment area. This is where tourists come and they enjoy it immensely, and it's created an economic stability for you. The next one's a little play on words that if we do what we're capable of doing, Portsmouth is going to mock us and describe themselves as the Wilson of the seacoast. That may be a bridge too far, but whatever.
Worth mentioning.
Yes. The next thing is, in addition to building a new elementary school, it would be good to set a higher standard for our whole school system. And one of the things that Littleton has marketed itself for since the 90s is to be the best small town in America. And we were recognized one time in the 9th, another time it's the 7th. I don't know where we fit now, but we've always been recognized as one of the best in America. If we made the same commitment to our school system in general, we could have, and that would, and a great school system pays dividends in many different ways, whether it's recruitment of families or businesses or whatever. Obviously, a key component of that would be to do the $20 million Lakeway Elementary School. Some of the things that we're already doing well in our school system that are maybe are not articulated as much as they should be was that in 2015, Commissioner Virginia Berry awarded all 4 of our schools the Circle of Excellence Award. We're the only school in New Hampshire that's ever received all of the schools that award in 1 year. So it talks about how we were perceived in the southern part, in Concord. We've already put $20 million into our buildings, doing the high school renovation and the CTC and the middle school, plus we put quite a bit of money already into Lakeway just to keep it going. So we've already put 20 million in, and the reason we were able to put 20 million in was we were able to grow our tax base from the 241 to the 794. One of the reasons we can also become a great school system is we have great kids. In 2001, the school board, Diane Cummings, out here somewhere, she was on the school board at the time. We won't go into all the details on that, but the school board decided that Littleton being a community of givers, that we should encourage participation by our kids. And so there's a graduation requirement that they performed 50 hours of community service. Since 2001, our kids have done over 130,000 hours of community service. And in last year alone, 54 kids, the class of 2018, did 6,600 hours. They don't just clean up an area or get the picture in the paper and then go home. They do it every single day, week in, week out. So we got great kids, hardworking kids. Hugh J. Gallen Career and Technical Center, we're on our 2nd edition there. One program of note that is just exceptional, and that's our Allied Health Technology program. Approximately 200 kids have gone through that program from all the different high schools that go in there. Every single one of them has gone on to college, either a 2-year or 4-year program. They may not have all gone to healthcare, but there's something that's connecting and giving confidence to kids to go further their education. Great program. We already are spending $23,000 per year if you take our gross budget divided by our number of students That's what we're spending per year. So we're already a school district that is really supporting our kids. We have a homegrown administrative team. Jen Carbonneau and Greg Fillion have that school just a-humming. Greg Fillion sets the tone. It's like a switch watch in there. Everything moves as it's supposed to. Crystal Blaisdell's doing an outstanding job at Lakeway. Steve Niles is an experienced superintendent that's empowering them, and the schools are improving exponentially. One of the things that we should really be proud of is the reduction in our dropout rate. For years, 15 to 20% of our kids dropped out of high school, not just in Littleton, but in the entire North Country. Starting about 12, 13 years ago, Governor Lynch said, I want to raise the dropout rate from 16 to 18. And there was a lot of gnashing of teeth and so, oh, we can't do that, we can't do that. All we're going to do is have more problem kids. Well, strategies were developed, and right now, for the last 4 years, our dropout rate has averaged less than 1/2%. So we're keeping our kids and we're getting them moving ahead. We have the highest area teacher salaries. Steve Niles told me a year ago, they needed to fill 14 positions. They got every single teacher that they wanted to get. So they're coming here. Each of the schools have school improvement plans. Our athletic programs are the best in Division 4, record-wise, over the last 10 years. We have some phenomenal college matriculation. And then I think really the icing on the cake is what the community does for the kids once they graduate. In class night this past year, $293,000 in scholarships were given out. Franco Rossi, one of our selectmen, went to a graduation of a family member in New York, upstate New York. They gave out $34,000. He couldn't believe. And there's currently an endowment between what's in the supervisor funds for the town and then what the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation is about $8.5 million to fund it. The next thing is the LHS graduates. I won't go through them, but our kids are going to great schools and doing very well. Then the last thing that I've asked both the selectmen and the school board in presenting to the budget committee is to adopt, if we could, 9 goals. The primary goal is to get $1 billion in tax base so that we can pay for Lakeway and other improvements. How are we going to improve it? Expand the industrial park, solicit additional brands, keep building our Main Street and River District, which I call it now the Chapman Complex, formerly Hitchner's. It's no longer Hitchner's, they're long gone. That has a potential to have a very positive impact educationally and economically. But while we're soliciting a range of brands, we can't not forget our anchors and icons that we have, and we're lucky to have some tons. Now, why do we need the primary goal of $1 billion tax base? To have the best small school system in America, to build a new elementary school, and also the selectmen have, and I had the opportunity to watch their presentation, to hopefully build a new parks and recreational facility. About the only facility that's older than Lakeway is the green building at Remy Park. It's about the only one.
It's a beautiful building.
Now that burned down on January 1, 1930. And then it was rebuilt. The town put $1,500 and they had $1,500 in insurance. We got $3,000 of capital investment in that building in 1930. So it's the only one that's older. So what I'm asking, and the two things that, in addition to establishing the goals, is also to make it easier. The whole idea of moving ahead would be not to add a whole bunch of new committees, but to keep using the committees we have. And one of the things I said at the school board last night was that successful large bond issues, school bond issues, can have dire consequences for communities. And I'll give you an example of 2. Franklin High School, about 15 years, Franklin built a brand new middle school. The cost to the taxpayers was $750,000. Well, they were happy they got the new school, but they weren't too happy about paying it. And as a result, there was a revolt by the taxpayers. The Franklin Taxpayers Association was formed. They threw everybody out of office, and they took $750,000 out of educational programs. Was not really the way it was intended. A second community, Durham, home of UNH. They built a brand new high school, big bond issue, passed, everybody was happy. Tax bill came in, there was a revolt, and Durham has a taxpayers association. Now, one of the reasons Littleton doesn't have a taxpayers association is because of this committee. The taxpayer is represented in the process from the very beginning. So what you guys do as part of the representing the taxpayers, that this is very critical, and it helps us move ahead because all of the school and town proposals are vetted by citizens and have input. And so that's very important. So not going to create any new committees, everybody's going to stay in their lane under this proposal. The school board would work on developing the best proposal for the schools. The town will continue to provide leadership on economic development. LIDC will keep doing what they do well, and the budget committee will continue to play their role. So there's no reason to create any new committees. It's just hopefully we could have a higher purpose. Can this be done in 5 years? Yes. Will it all happen completely? No. Anyone who's ever been involved in economic development, things take always a lot longer than you ever hoped for, right, Ed? How long? Whatever you set for a schedule, but the 5-year window is reasonable to make a good faith effort. So I'm just presenting this to you, and this is a concept, not a plan. In other words, there's plenty more fingerprints that need to be put onto this. This needs to be noodled, developed by the selectmen and the school board and the budget committee, and hopefully maybe there's 9 goals, we'll end up with 8, maybe we'll end up with 10. But it's a process that I hope can move us so that we don't end up like Franklin, we don't end up like Durham. And what can happen is that if you have that large school bond issue, which this can set a town back 10 years if it's not done right. And economic development and taxpayer growth has got to be part of it, because you're not going to add $20 million worth of costs onto the backs of the taxpayers without a revolt. And I know you guys won't let that happen. So,
Thanks, Brian.
All right, thank you as always, Brian.
thank you.
Just to go along with what Brian just said, it just occurred to me, and I don't have the new one with me, but the handout that we got from Andrew on where our tax dollars come from is really important.
We have a revised one of these.
They're coming.
They're coming.
Yeah.
Karen, it's going to be hot off the press, so to speak.
Yeah. We tried to make some changes this afternoon, so wanted to get those in.
So, and the other thing, we're going to have some revisions, but I did get from the school, because we absolutely need to take that into consideration as well, their negotiated agreement impact. And I will find that in just a minute.
Well, you know, I got one question, Brian. I've heard that 3 times now.
Right.
Right.
You're a veteran.
Yeah.
That was
The only
4 times too much.
The only question I got is, you keep saying that the population of Littleton is getting younger.
Yep.
So is the population of Littleton growing? Do we have statistics that show that?
I don't believe we are. We're having an adjustment in population of where people are coming that are younger to town. And one of the things that you mentioned the last time is the lack of new housing being built. Between 2000 and 2006, a 7-year period, we averaged 29 new housing starts in Littleton. From 2009 to 2017, an 8-year period, we averaged 4. We've got to get our housing stock going back again. There is a shortage of inventory in town because we haven't been building any homes. That's the bad news. The good news is that every house in Littleton, from the fall of 2017 to the spring of 2018, went up a minimum of $25,000. It showed up in our evaluations. The signs are also indicating that may happen again this next year. So once we get our housing stock a little bit higher so that we can start being able to build homes, that will help address the population. Getting back to your point, I don't have any information that we are seeing a tremendous increase in population.
Okay. Because the other part of that question is, are we seeing a decrease in older population? If we're seeing an increase in younger, and the population is not growing, are we seeing a decrease in older, and why? They can't all be dying off, so what's happening in our older population?
Well, I can tell you one group of people who want to sell their homes and move into a condo don't do it in Littleton because we don't have condominiums. Milt Bratz was mentioning that he had a series of friends that love living in Littleton, but they wanted a condo, they went to Bethlehem, or they go to somewhere else. So there's a shifting of where population is, but that, when New Hampshire Public Television, the president of it, I said, why did you do Littleton? He said, well, you guys are getting younger. I said, oh, really? And then there was a recent report that came out in the last week that showed it wasn't just Littleton, it was Bethlehem. And it may just be our area is contributing, is drawing people in, and that's a good thing for us, for work opportunity. Plus, I think if you saw it, I think a week ago in the Union Leader, the whole state has turned it over. Starting in 2013 to 2017, we were losing young people. This last year, we gained about 6,000. So the state is starting to retrieve or retain younger people, and Littleton, for whatever reason, I can't give you the exact route, is leading the way. So what are we doing? We got to keep doing it.
Which goes back to what I've been saying kind of for 3 years. We need affordable housing. If we don't have it, this plan's not gonna work. We need to get affordable housing in this community, because it's just not there now.
I'm going to give these to Steve so we can pass it out to everyone. These are what the cost would be for the bond at 4% interest, 6% interest, with building aid and without building aid. And one of the things the Budget Committee should know, some of you do, maybe all of you do, building aid does not pay a penny in interest. It's only principal. So if we had 4% interest, 20 million in bond, that's 800,000 the first year of interest that we would have to pay. And even if we got building aid, we still would have a bill of about 1.25. So that, again, to make when you talk about affordable, obviously taxes is part of it.
So, go ahead.
Point of order. I understand it's tonight we're going to vote on everything, correct?
We're trying to get there.
So the budget is ours, and we can change anything we want to.
I hope so.
The warrant article is selectmen's.
And the
All we
warrant,
can do is-
no, we can make recommendations on changes for both in the proposed budget and in the warrant articles. But just to give you kind of, the flip side, because we can't just do the town without knowing what's happening on the school side. So I just handed out what their negotiated agreement, I guess it was voted on by the board last night. So you have that right there. The first year is 118,000 impact on the tax, or that's new money. And then the other part, I did ask about their proposed budget. Remember, they had said 202,000 increase in new monies in the proposed budget, and possibly a reduction of 114,000 because of the health insurance decrease. They have decided that they are going to still keep the 114,000 in their budget because of recent placements for special education. So it's stretching them. So we're still at the 202, let's see if I have it completely, $202,379. That's new. So then we also have the 118,618 on top. So that's on the school side. And I will hand it over to Andrew. Do you have any revisions to the proposed budget?
I have some recommendations, and I haven't been able to meet with all the department heads to go over some of the questions. Here comes Karen too. I do have one question on the school negotiated agreement. Do you know if only wages were a consideration? Were there other cost implications from other benefit changes? Or
I do not know. So Thursday we'll get more of that information, but from what my understanding, this was the major impact that they had, but I have no idea on anything else. So.
Yeah, I know that when we're trying to negotiate, I mean, we calculate right down to, the cost of a shift, some slight shift change.
Well, they
but-
have, as
so-
you can see, they have all the,
Wages,
wages
wage-related
and,
changes. But, I just don't know. It'd be interesting to see if there's other.
I heard that there wasn't any changes to health insurance, to
Yeah.
who pays what.
Yeah, and we can try to work with them
Percentages.
too to see, we'll call them and see if we can find out more. So, Karen's got the updated, you want to start with passing out some of the recommended changes, and
Yes.
we'll walk through from there?
Yep.
Okay.
So yes, I think we can go through the budget. Now, let's just get some kind of sense of order here. I don't know what it is, but let's try to see what it is. The proposed budget, let's go through that first, and then, unless you want to kind of give us a large overview.
Well, there has been some changes.
Would it be would it be worthwhile to take the gross numbers that we currently have?
Yes.
And put those together first,
Yes.
just so that
Yes.
we have a sense, if everything were to be approved that we have
Right.
in front of us now, altogether, what that would mean?
And, Mr. Chairman, also, I have our wastewater engineers here. I don't know if we would want to entertain a presentation on Article, I guess it'd be Article 2, the sub-area 2 project, to kind of go through what that is and help
Right
explain
now?
that.
Is that what you'd
When
like
do you
to-
think it would be timely?
Well, if you're gonna,
If you
Might
want
as
to do that,
well.
Might as well.
we'll do
Probably
Might
good
as
to do it
well,
now.
Okay.
just
So-
so,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll like to introduce Andrea Day. She works with Dufresne Group. And Mr. Welch, I forgot your first name, I'm sorry. Stanley Welch, also with Dufresne Group. And they've been working with us on taking a previous study that was done by Woodard and Curran back in, I think, 2010, and prioritizing our wastewater collection system. So
Okay, so I just
Turn it over to
have
Andrea.
a short presentation, see if it works, on what sub-area 2 is, and where we're at in the process, and what we're looking at for improvements.
And maybe just a brief update on Sub 5, because that's something that the Budget Committee considered, I think, 2 years ago.
Sure,
And
so
we've been working through that.
Sub-5 started construction this fall. You probably noticed the work in Union Street. They got the lining done that was proposed in Union Street this fall, and some of the manholes replaced, and they'll be starting back up in the spring.
Thanks.
So sub-area 2, let's see if this works. Don't hit that stuff. Is located, that's Far Hill Road, and this comes all the way down to Littleton Diner, Dunkin' Donuts. We added, sub-area 2 didn't originally include Main Street, but because of the Phase 2 Main Street reconstruction project, we thought it was best to look at the underground utilities before the surface infrastructure work was considered. So it includes Far Hill Road, Tuck Lane, Heather Lane, that neighborhood there up on the hill, Lifetime Public Works and the fire department. So sub-area 2 was identified in a report completed in 2012 as having the second highest amount of inflow and infiltration in the town. Inflow is where you have a direct connection, such as a catch basin that's directing stormwater into the sewer main, and infiltration is where your sewer main is in such poor condition that it's allowing groundwater to come into the main. It was also reported to us by the Public Works Department while we were working on sub-area 5 that that neighborhood was an area of concern and the utilities were in poor condition. So the capacity of the wastewater treatment plant is about 1.5 million gallons a day. Normally it runs around 600,000. I got some data from the operator just the other day. 2017, there was some abnormally warm weather in February, and the flow went up to 1 million gallons. That happens pretty frequently when it warms up or we have a large rain event. However, in January of 2018, I looked back at the weather, and it was about 60 degrees, and we had a couple of days of rain, one of them being like 1.5 to 2 inches. And the flow at the wastewater treatment plant was 4.4 million gallons. So the maximum design capacity of the plant is actually 3.6 million gallons a day. So occasionally there will be these high temperatures and rain events that, happen, and when there's still snow on the ground, and that really spikes up the flow at the plant. So some of the reasons for this, in the spring when there's high groundwater, you can see that there's some breaks in the pipe here, some breaks where roots have come into the pipe. So this is pretty consistent throughout sub-area 2. I was looking through all the videos. As part of our analysis, we had a contractor come in and video all the mains, and it was concerning. So there's another broken, you can see the pipe is actually coming out itself. So the proposed project is basically to replace the manholes in the sewer mains. The manholes, the majority of the manholes in the project area are undersized, so it makes it really difficult to get in and access the manhole and do maintenance. So it would include West Main Street, just past where the entrance to the Public Works garage is, and then all the way down to where it intersects with Main Street, and then Main Street down to Maple Street, I guess it is. And then the streets in that neighborhood, so Far Hill Road, Patriots Drive, West Elm, Winter, Woodside, Sunset, Fairview, North Fairview, Rock Drain, Heather, so that whole neighborhood
And that's
is proposed
actually
for
a
replacement
newer
with
area,
PVC.
right?
Yes.
So does that mean that it was underbuilt when it was?
Our impression from discussing it with the Public Works Department anytime they've gone up there, construction methods during that time were poor. And so there's rocks and poor bedding around the pipe that have caused the pipe to fail prematurely.
And the piping wasn't Bermico tubing, was it?
In that area, it is.
A lot of asbestos cement pipe, so it's kind of a similar construction, more industrial, but it doesn't have an extremely long design life, and it's not abnormal, the type of things that we're seeing for asbestos cement pipe. But like Andrea said, the construction methods, the manhole construction, the pipe alignments, there are just a lot of different factors that played into the condition.
So we're just finishing up. This week we'll submit the final report. We've submitted a draft for review by the funding agencies, so Rural Development and the state, and they've submitted their comments back. And so we're finishing up addressing their comments. That'll be going out this week. So, so that was step 2. That was partially paid for by a grant from Rural Development. And then step 3 would be funding for design, and the grant and loan application for rural development is due on Friday. I've been harassing Karen every other day. And then, of course, for this work to proceed, there needs to be a positive bond vote. So based on the map and what the project cost was for sub 5, you may be able to tell that it's a larger area. I think the next slide might have the costs on it. So we're looking at construction 2020 to allow time for final design and permitting. We need to work with DOT on working in there right away for the Main Street portion of the project and West Main. And so a reasonable construction time frame would be 2020, and that is $6.3 million total project.
So when this is all done, what's the positive impact to the sewage treatment plant?
So this would reduce the amount of infiltration and inflow. Based on my discussions with the operator, although he's operating under capacity right now, he has some quality issues that aren't allowing him to allow for additional flow. Basically, the water quality that's coming in is of such a quality that he can't treat to the flow capacity.
Does that make the equipment, the waste station, I know nothing about, just fail more? I mean, what's the impact on?
It's like a potential impact like centrifuge coming in the.
Right, so there's, we've got another project that we're discussing with Andrew and the Public Works Department and the operator at the wastewater treatment plant to try and get some grant funds to evaluate the wastewater treatment plant. But it is, I would say it's not necessarily related to directly to sub-area 2, but this plant is aging out. Just, it was installed in the 80s. The equipment doesn't last forever. So, I mean, if you're frequently exceeding the capacity of the plant, you put yourself at risk for permit violations, and I don't think anybody wants to go there when we're under-treating or discharging untreated wastewater. That's the risk, is that you cannot treat to the level that you're required to, and you end up with a
And failure to address those.
insufficiently treated wastewater discharged into the river.
As I found out, is actually potentially a criminal offense. So I had within my first month here, I had the USDA criminal investigator with arresting authority blowing up my voicemail and let me know he was in the area, and we addressed the issues, I'll just say, but it's there. So.
Town managers go to jail for.
Who's ever involved with potentially making decisions that
That guy
don't
actually
keep
called
it
a month before, and they said, call back next month, we'll have a new guy.
Actually, that's true.
There's a movie made about that, I'll have to tell you about that.
Typically, it comes with hefty fines.
Yeah, it was
Your example of
EPA.
the million gallons that went through there, if this was all done, what would that be?
Hmm.
600,000?
So how much would this?
What kind of an impact would that have on that excess flow?
That's difficult to quantify. I can look back
Good guess.
and look at percentages. I wouldn't
Yeah.
venture a guess right at this time. I haven't looked at that report.
But obviously,
in a little
targeting a major reduction.
Yeah, this area, because it's so much larger than sub-area 5, although sub-area 5 had a higher percentage based on the size of the area of infiltration and inflow, this area is likely contributing more actual volume just because of the sheer size of it. When they do their analysis, they base it on the feet of pipe, so it's basically, a ratio of the length of how much pipe is in the area.
One other consideration might be if there were perhaps a development up at Greenwood Acres, how much more this infrastructure is going to be taking on.
Right, so we,
For example, a school.
in the planning phase and sizing of all of the mains that we're recommending for replacement, the new mains, they're all sized sufficiently to handle, future subdivisions up, off of, I think
Uphill.
it's Top Quain, and then also we spoke with the
School.
Yeah, the school about the capacity that they're anticipating if that lot got developed with school, the new school. So we've taken that into consideration when doing these cost estimates to make sure that if there's residential or if the school moves up there, there's enough capacity to handle the additional wastewater flow. It's a big project.
Hmm.
Any questions?
But a necessary one.
Yes. Yeah, as you saw in the photos, I feel sorry for Bill because some of those photos, I'm sure he's looking at them going, oh, boy.
Amy, you said reduce cost. It just says reduce cost. Do you have an idea of how much money we're talking about? It's a slide before.
As far as the operation and maintenance. Oh, and, it always costs more to address something in an emergency as well. So if one of those mains that is going like this, that you saw in the photo of fails, Bill's gonna have to get out there and get somebody out there to dig it up and fix it, and it's gonna cost more. So on that regard, and then also any water that's inflowing or infiltrating into the system, it costs more to treat 4.4 million gallons than it does 600,000. So as long as, we're trying to systematically move throughout the system and reduce the amount of water that is not wastewater that's getting into the system so that the plant is only treating.
Yeah. There's also costs, legal and otherwise, from backups that kept going to houses when a line breaks. I know that we've had a few of those, maybe more than a few.
How many citizens does this serve? How many houses? Would you say, just a guess?
Pull it up. I got a table
I
in
was
here.
just filling that out, but I was also doing another application at the same time, so I'll probably get them jumbled up.
That's all right.
300, 400 residents, does that sound right?
Yeah, residential units, it was high 200s, I think. And then there's some businesses, the Main Street area, that also serve.
Several hundred.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to be in that several hundred.
So what's the new technology for manholes and piping?
So we looked at whether lining, like we're doing on some of Union Street here, made sense. There are too many condition issues, alignment issues, sags. You can't fix those issues just by lining the pipe. And so all of this is proposed to be traditional open trenched, new pipe laid, new manholes. I think we've got maybe 2 or 3 manholes that are new that we won't have to replace, but the rest of them are all
Basically,
undersized.
controlled construction methods and totally updated materials. So modern PVC, SDR 35 pipe and precast concrete manholes, everything gets air tested, vacuum tested, so it's sealed and there will be somebody on site to observe.
But the lines are actually PVC,
Yes.
a lot of them.
Yeah.
Okay, and the life expectancy of that is,
75 to 100 years.
and this would have been 40 to 50 years if this has been in place.
Yeah, that's what they're finding. I think when it originally came out, PC pipe was supposed to be a 75-year design life, but it just doesn't last that long.
Your PCB pipe is like 30, 25 feet long. Were these sections so that they're more vulnerable in those small pipes?
The clay tile pipe comes actually in like 3 or 4 foot sections, and there is a significant amount of clay tile pipe in this area as well. So a lot of the joints that's where you get alignment issues too. Every joint is, if you're not buried properly and compacting properly, then you get deflections of joints and debris builds up in there and causes backups. The AC pipe, I think, is 15-foot length, so it is a little longer, but the PVC pipe comes in 20-foot lengths. Nowadays they install it with a laser, so it's on a grade on a line, so you don't have alignment changes, you don't have debris collecting in the mains. They're designed with slopes to maintain velocities that solids don't stay on the pipe, they stay in solution and keep moving. So it basically would just be to modernize the whole area. A lot of the manholes are really poorly constructed, so a lot of debris collects in the manholes, which I'm sure contributes to a lot of the backups that have been reported in the area.
Prior to 1963, we had a very efficient sewage and storm drain system. We dumped everything into the river. Very efficient. In 1963, in January 63, we had a special town meeting to build the first section of the sewage treatment plant, and that was generated to try to save the Saranac Tannery. And the Saranac Tannery failed 3 years later, but it gave us the opportunity to be the first community on the Ammonoosuc to put a sewage treatment plant in, which also has been the backbone of having the capacity to serve business areas like the industrial park. About 15 years later, as it happened environmentally, they required a secondary round of treatment facility, and that was what was installed in the 70s. The savings that we'll get from these projects is life of your treatment plant. Because your treatment plant, Larry Jackson told me 10 years ago, to replace the treatment plant would have cost $25 million then. It would probably cost 35 to 40 to rebuild what we have right now. And where the savings is the capacity end. And this would be the 4th step that collectively the town has done to improve their efficiency of the existing systems. The first was getting rid of the roof drains on Main Street through the Main Street project, which dumped into the sewer line. They now go into the storm drain. The second part was the River District, which was just done this year, was on the opposite side of Main Street. Those were now connected into the storm drain, and the cross connects are gone. Then the Mill Street, whatever 2 it is, and then this is the 4th one. When the system is completed, I don't know when that's going to be, we're going to have the storm drains going where they're supposed to go, the sewer going, and we'll have a much greater capacity for future expansion and not have to spend $35 to $40 million for a new sewage treatment plant. So the savings occur for capacity, and Billy's life would be a lot easier too.
The major road constructions or street constructions that we've done, like Upper School Street, Hill Street, those were all done with the same idea also, is to get those catch basins out of the storm system. I mean, out of the septic system. Right, get rid of the cross connects and each one of those smaller projects that we've done through the years, that's been one of the focus. Not just to put a new asphalt in and make the road travelable again, but also the infrastructure underneath. It's all been accomplished. Thanks to the taxpayer.
Does this project also have all these roads being redone as well?
It would not be like a full width sub-base reconstruction, but we would do what we're doing on sub 5 is to do a full width overlay. Because typically, when you're doing with storm and sewer, you're digging up, and those streets are not real wide, so most of the asphalt would be disturbed anyways, so we would just overlay.
It would be nice to be able to think that we could afford to do box cuts on every street that we're going to disturb and do all the subgrade with new material and everything, but it would be unaffordable.
And so, I don't know if you want to go to the last slide, but the funding options for this, local borrowing, I know Karen can usually get a pretty good rate, however, this project would be of such a size that it's unlikely that local banks would want to touch it. Karen can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but it's probably a little out of what they're looking to fund. So then you're looking at the state revolving loan fund and or USDA rural development. We have already had a meeting with rural development, and they have encouraged the town to apply for funding for this entire project amount, because they said because it's such a large project, you're going to have your best chance at maximizing the amount of grant. And so for Littleton, that means 45% grant. So that's
45% out of that 6 million, is that what you're talking
right.
about?
So 45% of that would be grant. So that is what I'm working on, preparing for submittal on Friday. So hopefully, with any luck, we would have an idea before town meeting whether they were going to come through with a grant offer.
What is the 19.1% rate increase?
So based on, so if you just solely funded the remaining principal and interest of the 45%, so the 55% of the 6 million, and just funded out based on, you know, the income from the rates, it would be 19%.
I do have the answers to a couple of your earlier questions. During sub-area 2, the infiltration estimation during high groundwater was 78% of average flow, and that value was infiltration flow. They're 3/4 of what you have contributed for sewer, you're also getting for groundwater. And then there's 272 units, residential units.
So 78% of the water going to the treatment plant should be going elsewhere.
During high groundwater, yeah. Well, just from contributing from that area. So that's not across the board, the whole system, that's just targeted sub-area 2.
But that area is producing that influx.
Yeah, during high groundwater, it's 1.75 times what it should be. And you get 75% increase of infiltration due to groundwater, just because of the condition of the pipes and the manholes. So it's significant.
But never underestimate Karen's ability to get the best rate. She has her sources.
Oh, I know.
They're running dry.
Oh, we eat a little bit.
Do we know under that USDA rural development option what the 19.1% rate increase, what that would be for the average user?
The dollar value? We have to run rates, the rates.
I think.
Yeah, I think the USDA application has us figure that out, right? As part of that?
They
We look
do
at the
their
rate.
own calculations.
They do.
But that would be nice to know.
Yeah. Right.
$8 a month.
$8 a
I'm
month.
guessing that's a while, yes.
I'm trying to think what it was. So it was- yeah.
And Diane, while we're waiting, Diane had a question, and I did find a chart, which I haven't had a chance to extrapolate everything out of, but I can get it to you in raw form, which is a list of all of the rates in the state of New Hampshire.
106 a year.
So take a look and see where we're at. One of the things that the DES warned me about, they said, look, you may see towns that have really low rates, but there's a lot of things that aren't being shown here. For example, like their infrastructure is totally failing, and there's going to be a huge increase soon. And they're saying, you don't want to be there, so, you know,
Right.
let's like kind of keep this thing up.
It's all
Yeah.
when it rains, it pours, right?
Yeah.
So-
There's another article that we didn't have on the sheet. It's on the updated sheet, and that's for the life cycle analysis. I don't know if you have a presentation or just want to
I
speak.
don't.
Okay.
So that was what I mentioned just to the side a minute ago. Where there's some principal forgiveness and loan funds that the CWSRF offers for asset management, and the wastewater treatment plant is eligible for $30,000 of loan forgiveness. If you do asset management, basically it's taking an inventory of all the equipment there, assessing the condition, and assigning a value to what's there and what needs to be replaced, and it's a really useful budgeting tool. So that's like the 5-second version of asset management. There's much more to it.
Yeah,
but essentially,
yeah.
in order to be eligible for that CWSRF funding, they require a bond be passed. And so that's $49,000. Of that, $30,000 would be forgiven. And there's no penalty for prepayment, so if there's $19,000 in the sewer fund, you can just pay it off. But
That's what we want.
regardless, they require a bond.
So it would be zero this would be zero tax dollars. There'd be no implication to the sewer rate, because we would just use when you pay your sewer bill, there's a fee that's put on that goes into ongoing maintenance and repairs. And so we would be able to access those funds and
What's
use
the
that.
balance in that?
In the replacement funds or
Yes.
the total sewer?
Total sewer.
Total sewer is, and
You already got two.
I've got $1,067,396.
So
And
that would be
What is
easily done
unallocated?
then.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So,
Amy, you talked about penalties aside from jail time for it. But what are the dollar penalties that might be associated if we didn't do this, if we violated some of the regulations? You haven't happened to know? Because that's the cost of not doing this.
Right, so, if you don't upgrade your system, you are at risk for discharging undertreated or untreated water into the surface water. That's similar to, when Shaw's pump station failed and there was wastewater flowing across the ground and into the creek. I don't know what kind of fines they were charged, but I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look into it.
Yeah.
There's
We would
yeah.
be, that could be something that could happen.
Yes.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Trying to wrap my head around it also. If we're not discharging at a certain level that the state says that plant's supposed to discharge at, then we're susceptible to being fined. I guess is a very good layman's way of explaining it to you.
Yeah.
That plant is only allowed to discharge, or is allowed to discharge, at this certain level. If we exceed that on a regular amount, then they're gonna come in and then they will assess why, who,
Yeah.
and then take it from there.
Yeah, the who is
They
us.
don't- Yeah.
It's up to us to find the
they
other
don't
who's.
play around. They will
Yeah.
come.
But, and I don't know what point, there's some point where, if you go above your flow capacity, I don't know where that's at, where they say, okay, it's time, your plant is now out of
Right,
compliance and you have to build a new one.
80%. If you're consistently at 80% of your design capacity,
Right.
then you need to start looking at an upgrade to increase the capacity of the plant. Now, the plant does need some upgrades because of its age, but we're not talking about a capacity increase at this point. That would be more substantial, but we're just talking about, equipment's
Right.
aging out, needs replacement, or that type of.
So what, normally, at what capacity are we at? On
An average day,
Average
about
day.
600,000 gallons a day.
and
Which is
what-
what percentage?
What
Yeah.
percentage is that?
Oh,
Third?
the design is 1.5.
Okay.
So it's a lot, yeah. But, and there's other considerations too. One of the things we've been trying to do lately is actually, so there's the flow capacity, but then we can only take so much pH, so much TSS, so much BOD, and even temperature. All of it's we only have so much capacity. And so whenever we use up some of that, that's something that we can't do in the future. Like, for example, a brewery takes up high BOD and you can only have so much of that. So you kind of divide it up, but we're trying to do a better job of, protecting that pie so that there's more available for future growth.
And that's part of what we'll look at. We've
With
got
the
another
asset.
grant application going to try and improve treatment, wastewater treatment.
Yeah. And basically with this second one that we're talking about, you're getting a capital improvement plan basically out of it. And we're finding right now that, we're aged out of, our centrifuge, I think is at 16 years with a lifespan of 10, I believe, and it just failed this year, and it's costing us, what was it, $5,000-$6,000 a week, I think, Karen, extra.
About 3,600.
So, yeah, the centrifuge dewaters, it takes the water out, and then we have to truck the solids out, and right now, we can't dewater, so we're trucking liquid all the way to Plymouth and have to pay for that to be
Hopefully,
treated, so,
it's today.
yeah.
Hopefully.
Today it
When
could be
I
repaired.
stopped
Today.
down- When I stopped down
But-
earlier, the
Yeah.
centrifuge, they were doing the vibration tests on it, and they were exceeding the factory limits.
Oh, good.
So they,
Good news.
it was doing
We're
very
close.
well. They fell
It's only
into
been a couple of months,
Westphalia.
so.
I was amazed on the welding job that Wilco
Oh,
had
good.
done,
Okay,
just to
good.
give them a little shout out.
That's
Their
another-
welder did a
yeah.
fantastic job down there to help us out, and the tech from
Right.
Westphalia was amazed.
Yeah, so we worked with the operator at the plant and got the centrifuge repaired. But, yeah, there's a lot of different pieces down there that are quite expensive, that are, aging out. They don't last forever. So.
And the select board had to do an emergency authorization to utilize sewer funds to help cover the additional expense of, I think it was, I don't know, maybe $60,000. So, yeah, saved us $300,000, which is good. But a lot to it.
Any other questions? Thank you. Andrea? Is
Yes.
it Andrea?
Yes.
Thank you. Do you want to, where do you want to
Do you
go
want
with
to,
this?
do you want to go a little, just some of those that are here to present, to talk about, answer some of the questions that came up last time? For example, there was a question about equipment at the police station and life expectancy and cycle. And we do have the police here to talk about that.
If they want to do a present, what do you?
I'm worried about the clock ticking by.
Yeah, me
and-
too. I think the question was, and I'll probably step in a foxhole here. I think the question was that there was one cruiser in the budget for this year, and actually 2 cruisers were purchased. And then we have another cruiser for next year, or the proposed budget. And then the question came up, what is the rotation cycle? And did it, so you can go ahead and explain that. That's where we'll leave it, okay?
My sense still is, though, that we need to get the big numbers
Can you give us a
together.
quick answer? Do you want to sit here, Paul?
You have a PowerPoint.
Oh, yeah, yes, I do. Let me hook up.
So,
Real quick.
I guess there is a quick answer, but it didn't develop quickly. The captain can best explain it, but surely our intentions weren't nefarious in any way whatsoever. The cruiser purchase, when it was placed back in the budget, previously when it was in the budget, it was it was a operational cost, and yes, we did purchase 1 car a year. Things kind of went sideways when our economy went south around between 2008 and 2010, and then it extended out after that. Then we got engaged in warrant articles, some passed, some failed. Our cruiser maintenance became expensive because our rotations were off. And then we were given opportunities through what a lot of police fleets do is in order to keep their fleets updated and to keep their fleets, their maintenance costs low, they tend to do lease purchase programs. Lease purchase programs do not spike the budget, but you can get more you can get cruisers, sometimes 2 or 3 at a time, extend your costs over 2 or 3 years. But what it does is it reduces operational costs and issues. So that was the intent in this year. But what happened is, as Karen explained to you, the legislative component changed the default budgets. So if you're intending on purchasing 2 cruisers over a 2-year period, utilizing the default budget, that's fine. But when it becomes a lease purchase, then it has to go, it wasn't voted on because of the way that they changed the budget, the legislature. So essentially, we had to buy the second car this year.
Yeah. So I guess the question was just coming up on, I know it wasn't an emergency, it was just a situation that arose and you had to do what you had to do. But that second purchase would actually have been the car that would be in the proposed budget for this
Correct.
coming year.
Yes.
So that was the question, do we need to have that
So
other car in the proposed budget for, because that would be the third car in 2 years. That's-
right.
okay.
So that it still put us in the correct rotation, and the captain's actually done some work to show you how that keeps our fleet up to date. We could be taking a step back by removing that patrol car, but it's certainly doable. And just so you know, the fleet was already delivered, outfitted, and on the street. We were discussing budget. I mean, prior to the presentation, I was informed that, hey, guess what? That's not happening. We need to purchase these vehicles this
Well,
year.
that's
Yeah.
totally fine. I think we totally understand
Yeah.
what happened. We're just asking for the future. There's so much before us.
Right.
This year, I mean, a lot before us this year, particularly with the proposed new school. And so that is the question. Can we take $47,000 out of the proposed budget for this coming year? Because that would be the third car in 2 years. I
Right.
know there's a rotation. I'm wondering if you need to get that rotation moving quickly. Could you come back next year with a request for two?
So,
cruisers?
yes, so what we did discuss, and again, the captain's done a lot of work on this, we did discuss that. Our concern is the spike in the budget. The positive of having a budgeted cruiser each year is that you don't see those fluctuations, correct? Even with warrant articles, you're gonna see fluctuations. We wanted to keep it as level as we could. The short answer is yes. We would most likely, if we've been informed that that vehicle's been removed from the budget, most likely we would come back to you next year with the proposal with those monies returned to our operating budget. And we will tell you that we will most likely do what we attempted to do this year. We'll be very vocal about it at the deliberative session, which I think meets the legislative requirement that our intent would be to do a lease purchase program.
So, I mean, I think is that where we're at on this, everyone? Does anyone else have questions about that? I mean, I think we're just trying to contain everything. We're trying to look at all the numbers all around.
Right. I understand completely, but I don't want you, because the impression that I received last week was that who gave you the authority to buy 2 cars, and that wasn't the intent. That wasn't the intent to outright buy 2 cars
I
in
don't
1
think they were
year.
worried about
I
that.
don't think
it
we're
was
worried
more
about that. I
just understanding how it works.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the question we had was, if there's $45,000 in the budget for next year, are you buying a car next year?
We would buy a car next year. We've adjusted based on the scenario that was given to us was we need to keep this in because we didn't want to fluctuate the budget. We didn't want the budget to spike back and forth. I mean, who doesn't, 1 year we have a 10% increase, another year we have 3%, and you're back. We didn't want to see those spikes. So yes, and we did develop a cruiser maintenance program based on a fleet program based on what we were presented with prior to that meeting where we said, hey, we're going to have to continue. Now we got to go back to the old way of 1 car every year. But we're trying to figure it out. The legislative change is really throwing a wrench in the mix, to be quite honest with you. Ultimately, we'll be open with you next year and tell you exactly what's going to go on. I think it's out of my hands at this point. The patrol car's been removed from the budget.
So Jim had asked, I think, what's the rotation, and Bill gave us, a rotation of his vehicles, and we are really short on time tonight. So I'm caught between, I would love to hear your presentation, but I think we'll all discuss about the cruiser tonight, and next year, I think Bill's presentation to me, because I'm not an auto person or a machine person, just to understand the rotation and what you're facing. So that was a great presentation.
Chief,
What's that?
can just probably say the same thing a different way. The issue really is, I think we all buy in that, yeah, you ought to buy a new cruiser every single year.
Right.
Okay, past year you bought 2. So why can't you skip? I'm not worried about a cruiser coming in next year if we don't have one in this year.
Right.
Okay, because you need it.
That's
But
correct.
the question is, well, you caught up by buying 2. You're actually ahead of the schedule, so let's waive the cruiser for this coming year.
Yeah, I think that's just.
Yeah.
Recognizing you're gonna put one in next year.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
fine.
Yeah, we're
The
fine.
answer is yes.
I just want to state that there was a couple of years that there was not a cruiser purchased. Either it didn't get approved or it was removed from the budget completely.
That's understood.
That's
So-
understandable, but we are in a rotation now, And we got 2 out of that rotation. Next year, we hope to present you with the 3rd cruiser.
So if you're
Not
on a
this
proper
coming year,
rotation,
but
it
the
seems like you
following
don't
year.
need another one this year.
Correct.
But if you're still behind,
Correct.
and it's going to catch up, that's a different issue.
Go ahead, Ken.
We're not behind. The initial intention of doing what we're trying to do anyways we would not be, because of a lease purchase, we pay for one year, one for the next. But since we paid for both this year, we do not need a new cruiser for next year. So we can go without that. But again, there is a really concern that when budgets come in next year, we say, well, we need this for a cruiser. Oh, if you look at your budget.
We know you're going to need one.
Right.
All these.
Right,
Which is great.
and we'll probably present it just like we would have done this year, okay? And the captain, because you're short on time, can show you historically, because he worked on this all day today, historically how keeping the fleet older is costing us money. So his presentation shows that the newer the fleet, the lower the cost, okay?
So the overall intent is to never have a car more than 6 years old?
Yes.
We understand that, that's what we understand.
Well,
We want to, yes.
In theory, yes, because
Yes.
sometimes you might have one that's not as good mechanically as one that might be a little bit older.
Oh,
You might
you
have a
gotta get
little
rid of
bit-
that one first.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
We appreciate you coming to explain, the situation, because, thank you, we appreciate that. Do you have a
Just
question?
Even though we might be moving forward tonight, can you email us that just for
Yes.
our
I can
own?
give it to you right now.
Oh, okay.
Oh, good.
It's kind of loud, that's why. So the other question that came up was a warrant article issue.
Right.
You want me to
yeah.
stick around for that?
Do you want, Chief Gilmore, he can better speak to the article, what is it now, 21?
We're calling it the Police Department Expendable Trust Fund, and it's for training for your part-time officers.
Well, it's more than training.
Okay.
So, again, just in the interest of time, this actually shows, I'm gonna keep one, Steve, if you don't mind. And then, what this shows is our current department staffing. And the question came up specifically about part-time officers. And I know there are people in here that recall when the department did have a lot of part-time officers. And you'll see in my bullet points that currently the PD is down to 2 part-time officers. Those part-time officers were previously employed by the Littleton Police Department, so we've already trained them and equipped them. Go ahead.
Patrol officers.
Part-time patrol officers, excuse me, part-time patrol officers. They were officers that left the department, they might have gone to a state agency, and they're saying, hey, we still want to work there part-time. So they already have uniforms, they've already been field trained, they've already been academy trained. In early 2000s, the police department, my predecessor was trying to get nationally certified. They realized there was such a disparity between part-time certified officers and full-time certified officers working in a part-time capacity that essentially the part-time program was eliminated. Funding was drastically reduced. Upon my appointment, we tried to get part-timers back on board because of the need to augment the schedule. Training, vacation, sick time, those things like that. But it's been very difficult. Again, spikes in the budget. I believe the part-time budget used to be in excess of $30,000. It's a finite amount of money. You could have 7 part-timers over the course of the year. They all get a piece of that pie. You could have 1 person working, getting a piece of that pie, but they're on an on-call basis, just like substitute teachers, okay? What we've come to realize right now is that in order to get these officers, new officers, into a part-time status, and a part-time capacity, and by the way, all of our part-time officers are full-time certified, they at least need 8 to 12 weeks of field training. So we got to pay them to come work for us for 8 to 12 weeks so that we can have them work solo out on the road. That costs money. Equipment costs money. If somebody comes to us and we just want to hire them flat out and have them part-time, work for us part-time, certified or full-time certified, we got to pay to send them to the academy. So what this proposal does is take unexpended funds out of our personnel line put X amount of dollars with a cap into a trust or a reserve fund with authorization either for the Board of Selectmen upon the chief's request to expend those funds for training, equipment, and actually hours for the part-time officers to work in Littleton. What we were trying to do is look for a creative way to get part-time officers on board without spiking the budget or the tax rate. Part-time officers are not paid retirement or medical benefits. It's what they get. They're less than 29 hours a week. So, perfect example. Have a person approach us a few months ago. Said, "Hey, I just moved to Littleton. I'm full-time certified. I would like to work for you part-time. Can't help you. I only have $10,000 in my budget. That's basically to cover one shift a week. Basically expended most of that money. I don't have the money to equip you, fully equip you, or to train you." So this is a creative way to try to accumulate funds with a cap, with a process, perhaps going to the select board and asking them permission to expend these funds so that we can get our part-time program back up. And ultimately, having a good, solid part-time program allows us to hire individuals very quickly without waiting a period of time, because we've already vetted them, we've already hired them, and the part-time status to get them into a full-time status capacity. Does that answer everybody's questions on that?
Well, I
So
don't
this really
understand.
does nothing for you until you're able to build that fund up to
What's that?
$1,000, I believe.
Right now, I've just
Yeah,
got
just
that.
wanted to have.
You can put unexpended funds in.
That's correct. And there will be a cap. She's working with DRA, trying to get the wording together, and then it'll go before everybody for approval, hearings, so on and so forth. Yes?
I was just wondering, you said we have to send them to the academy, right? Don't they come, they're certified already, so what's the disconnect that I'm not understanding here?
If, two different scenarios. If I have an officer from Bethlehem that comes to me and says, "I want to work for you part-time," we're okay. We don't have to send that person to either part-time or full-time academy. But if Jim McMahon shows up and says, "Chief, I want to be a police officer part-time for the town of Littleton," which we've had a lot of citizens in our community do that in the past, prior to this, I have to send him either to a 200-hour part-time police academy or 640-hour full-time police academy.
Okay, so
That's the difference.
Okay, I understand now, thank you.
Okay, but regardless, if even the officer from Bethlehem, he would still have to be involved in a ride-along for a period
Field
of time.
training, that's correct.
Just for familiarity is what you're saying. Paul. Familiarity, so that.
That's right. We have a mandatory field training program. It's the San Jose model that most professional police departments use, and it's anywhere between 8 to 12 weeks.
Just to get to a comfort level for him and for you.
That's correct. It could be extended if the person needs additional training.
The same thing would apply if some retired FBI guy came to town and had all kinds of talent, but in order for him to get involved, he needs to get through some type of acclimation plan so that he feels good about us and we feel good about him.
That's correct. Or they could be failed out of the program. Yes.
You got two part-time right now.
Yes.
How many do you think is reasonable for this size town?
It's not about reasonableness, because you're expending the same funds, that it's a finite amount of money that you can spend. So I've been on board with the department when I was part-time, there were 7 of us. And it was very effective for the chief to be able to reach out to those individuals for parades and for special events and other details that are out there. It's a force multiplier. Just remember, these people are full-time, we work full-time somewhere else. And so they're not always just sitting at home waiting for the phone call. They're working. And, you know, I think the Sheriff's Department had at one point like 40 of them, special deputies. I'm not gonna have 40.
Do they tend to leave after they get trained, they get uniforms, whatever they get? They tend to leave for other towns for full-time jobs?
I think that's an issue that we're dealing with statewide, depending on the age of some of the candidates that we could hire. You know, millennials, you're looking at, they might stick around for a few years and move on. Older People might say, I live here, this is my town, I want to stay here. It depends. It depends, but it's a reality.
Yeah, okay. I think, Rob, I think for talking part-time officers, in my 19 years here, no part-time officers ever left here to go work for a full-time agency.
It's more likely a full-time officer will leave for
That's
another
correct.
full-time position.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So you will have a cap on this. Is there do you have that magic number in your?
The magic number we're looking for is probably around a whole year's salary for an individual, and equipment, most likely, is the numbers that I've been working with some merchants on, or a merchant on. So, and that cap could be achieved, it might not be achieved in 5 or 6 years.
So that would be a cap, and it would just, okay.
And
I
it just
gotcha.
would continue being a rotating fund as part-time people come on board, we might use from it, and then more money would hopefully be put into it every year, just like what the Conservation Commission does with their funds.
But there would be more, can you give us a ballpark figure of how much has been spent in the last year or 2 years to do exactly what you wanted to do with the part-time, so we can see how much that fund would be drained each year, the average of what the usage would be?
It's in your packet.
Oh, okay.
But we have $10,000, which is roughly about 10 hours a week, for shift coverage, which isn't much because
So
we got more than
10,000,
one hour.
okay.
So 10,000 is not a lot of money when it comes to trying to cover all that
And
stuff.
the salary and the uniforms and everything, the cap would be approximately what?
I had come up with a figure of 30,000.
So 30,000
Nice.
cap, and it might be about 10,000 on the average each year that would come out?
We're
Possibly?
expending 10,000, and to be quite honest, and no disrespect to Karen, but I think the number's gonna be a little bit higher than that.
Okay, I just want to see how
That
often we have
accumulates,
to
that accumulates in the
replenish.
account?
What's that?
That accumulates in the account?
It would accumulate in the account till it gets to the cap. That's correct.
But you'd be using it all the time.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's what I was
So,
trying to get an idea of.
It might never reach the cap, if there were a cap.
There'll also be a mechanism in there to be able to expend. It's not like I can just start spending money. Probably would be through the select board.
All right. Any more questions?
Historically, the budget committees have loved part-time help at the police and fire department for 3 reasons. Flexibility for management, cover shifts, they're cheaper, they don't pay the insurance and that, and they potentially could build a bench, which has been one of the problems of when you need to have a new position opening. If you don't have people that are trained, that know the system, you gotta bring somebody in full-time and start them over. So historically, budget committees have loved part-time help because there's an economic benefit and a management benefit to it. So I think it's a good idea.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for coming. Do you want the extra?
So Jim, you're on the
packets?
short list. You're on the short list.
I have paper. More
I just want the
bag. Okay, where do we go from here?
Gross numbers.
Well,
Gosh.
you know, also I think we're going to request for more information on the dog parks.
No.
So I've got Chris.
Oh, Chris is here?
Yeah, take a quick
Okay. Quick? Yes, Chris, right here.
I'm fairly brief. Howdy, everybody.
The operative word being fairly.
We're going to be able to go through these warrant articles just like that now, right? Okay.
So I am co-chair on the dog park along with Sue Pilot over here. So a little over a year ago, Dog Park Commission was created. Because there's a need, we need to have a space that is not the ball fields that the kids are playing on, for dogs to play in, fenced-in area. So we've been looking at some different areas in town. We have one selected right now. It is we're trying to have it designated as surplus land by the state. So I don't have a definite answer on land at the moment, but that is what we're waiting for in our hope. You want to go to the next one? See what. So some of our goals were access for everyone. We wanted to have a walking distance to downtown. people downtown might not have a car, so having an area where they can walk to was something that the dog park committee was trying to get to. We want to have a place that's attractive for visitors that have pets. People are on vacation. We want it to be a friendly place. Another goal is to have it low cost for taxpayers. So we actually have 2 warrant articles going on. So one of them is to add $1 to the dog registration fee. That way people with dogs are the people paying for it, and it's not coming from your average taxpayer. So that's a piece of it. That would go into our operating costs. That would be that money would be expended by the select board. They would have control over it. We would have to request funding from them. So the second one is for funding to get it started, to get it going for the community. We also wanted it to be a community project. We're working with kids from the school, different businesses, nonprofit groups, including Above the Notch Humane Society. They've been great partners for us. So far for fundraising, just through our grassroots efforts, we've raised around $2,000. We've had some dog biscuit sales, stickers, that kind of thing. But we've also done a lot of legwork for 2019, and we were able to become a partner of the month, which averages over $3,000 each month for different organizations.
That's with a food co-op.
That's through Littleton Food Co-op. We did a lot of work in community outreach to make that happen. And I'm also partnering with a student group at Lakeway who approached us. They like the work we've been doing, and they wanted to hold a dance where the proceeds would go to it. So we have a lot of stuff coming up where we're also trying to continue this fundraising. So it's not something static. This is going to continue going through, and we're going to raise as much as we can to offset that cost. So some of our marketing, here's been a flyer that we've created, and our draft dog park was actually created by Jim. And what?
It's looking good.
Yeah.
I was wondering where that went. No, it's good. Yeah.
It encompasses a lot of features that we want: the walkway, benches. We want it to be a nice place for someone to go for a walk. This is when we go to events, farmers markets, things like that. This is the flyer that we've been using, and it gives our budget, what we've done. Back then, we had raised $1,000, so we're going to continue to do some of those items. So far for our budget for fencing, I based these numbers off of talking to different towns about how they got theirs started, where they got them located. All of them are within walking distance to either the school, downtown, or community area. I haven't found one except for the one in St. Jay, which is it's a very different type of area, Dog Mountain. I based this off of Shelburne, Vermont, which is within walking distance to their school. So $15,000 for fencing. Water hookups cost quite a bit to do. We want to have nice features in the park for people to interact with, for dogs to play with. Landscaping, our hope is, I know landscaping can be pretty expensive. We're hoping to offset some of that with volunteer labor as well. So, and then, building materials, pathway, you need stone, concrete, things like that. So this is based off of what they were doing in their areas. So, do you guys have any questions for me at the moment? Yes.
So, what is the primary issue that the dog park is trying to address?
So there was a bylaw, is it a bylaw? Passed?
Ordinance.
An ordinance. There was
This is in response sort of to the ordinance for...
Poop
Yes.
scoop
Shut down
ordinance.
the poop on the kids' fields ordinance.
Yeah. So there needs to be a fenced-in area for people to let their dogs loose. Sometimes it's easier to just let them loose in a fence than walking them and then picking up after yourself. So we want to take several issues and hopefully create a community where we take care of them. So we have a fenced-in area. We have, with rules, signage, things like that, and facilities, poop bags, things like that. We want to make sure that people have the resources to take care of their dogs.
And our location's will be right on the off of the rail trail, and right also connected to the river district and the pathway, so that people are taking their dogs out for a walk. It's really easy access. It's also close to the downtown. in the neighborhoods, because I think from what we found, people who don't have large yards, that's who really needs the access to the dog park. People who live in the country already have the dog park in their backyard. So.
Who's gonna maintain it?
That would be Park and Rec would be the main caretakers of it. We also want to keep the dog park commission going to help cultivate those volunteers and community members, because it has really been a community effort with the farmers markets.
Volunteers.
Yeah,
I mean, the dog poop goes into a barrel, and who's gonna,
that will either be me and my staff or volunteers. So.
Who wants to mow the grass?
Chris, if taxpayers pay some of this, what type of penalties are rendered against those dog owners who do not come here? Otherwise, you're kind of putting the taxpayers on the short end of the stick when you have these violators who don't get called in or even get fined. There should be, I think, severe fines for people who don't use this.
Yeah. So
is that the case?
It's something that I haven't researched much on. I haven't thought about it before. But at some point, park staff are going to be dog officers, which will be able to write tickets for that kind of thing.
I don't envy you.
Well, there's worse things. So
we do have. But you did that for the parks.
Yeah.
What about the Riverwalk? I mean, that's one of the most popular places around here for black dogs.
So with recreation expanding, there in that plan, there's a pavilion down there that we're hoping to have coils, have a really nice covered ice rink, that kind of thing. My staff already mow and pick up dog poop along the Riverwalk. So that is an area that we currently maintain.
But you're not going to try to enforce, stop people from walking?
We are going to.
Stop people from walking dogs?
Oh, not to stop. Well, we want people to walk dogs. We want them to pick up after themselves.
I see like more poop bags, dispensers along the Riverwalk. There are some now down on Mill Street along the rail, so we'd like to have more of those receptacles.
And that is a part of this budget as well.
So one of the things I've heard from a person that I know in upstate New York who comes over to Franconia and takes her walks and enjoys the paths around Franconia is that there's so much dog poop because people don't pick up after themselves. And so that is a major thing. She says she likes the paths for herself. She doesn't have a dog, but people walk them and then they don't take care of their dogs.
Yeah.
So the dispensers and everything else, the accessibility of that is really it's critical. I mean, I wouldn't want to be a tourist.
It's important.
That was from New York.
You want people to be able to walk to the dog park, do the river walk, and you want to be able to have it neat and clean. Volunteers, dog park committee members will all still be involved all the time, putting the dispensers out there, making sure things are done, making sure people are aware that, this is there, use it, but it's for everyone. It's not just for the dogs.
Yeah.
One piece of advice, Diana, is if you're gonna walk in an area, don't wear Vibram soles.
Yes, yes. My only other comment though is, I love dog parks, but you get a lot of people that are volunteers at the very beginning and then volunteers kind of dwindle out. So we know on the budget committee side that eventually those kinds of things end up being a paid position so just go into it.
Well, we're also thinking of using community service kids from the schools and help out. There's a lot of ideas for volunteers to come in that are different organizations. They want to do volunteer work. So we're hoping to include those people in the park. And I think they want to do it.
All right, so I think, thank you.
Good idea.
Thank you, guys.
And good luck.
I have a question. If
Yeah.
this is a town fee, can the selectmen change the fee?
You're talking about the
Why do you need a warrant?
Oh, no. This is.
Thank you, Brian.
Hold on, let me just look at where this is.
Don't worry about it. If you thought about it, fine.
Oh, that's okay. So, but there is a fee associated with the fine. The fine is in the.
I need those tomorrow.
For a fee?
For a fee.
To help start the development. So I believe it's
Is this your stuff or is this my stuff?
Oh,
That's extra stuff right there. This is extra here. So is this extra?
my paperwork.
Yeah, it might be extra stuff right here. Okay, I'll give it back until I need it.
An additional $5 charge and then put that money into the parking fund. So this is
Just extra.
This is a $1 for the
Okay, where are we now?
Big picture. Somebody remember, mentioned gross numbers.
Picture.
Big picture. We want big picture.
Big picture.
Well, this is the big picture. It's still in draft form until the selectmen, of course, approve it.
Do you all have some?
Right there at the table. Thank you very much, Brian.
You're welcome.
And
So can I just go back over the school big picture quickly, because it's not up for discussion right now, but at least you'll have it, those numbers in your mind. So 202,000 in increase, the 118,000 in the negotiated agreement, and then also approximately 900,000 for land acquisition and architectural and engineering. So that's kind of over on this side as we discuss
Would
this
you mind going
side.
with that one more time, Diane?
It's 202,000 for increased spending.
Okay, which included the 114, right?
Yeah, included the 114,
Okay.
of which they're gonna, they decided not to reduce the budget by that much.
Yeah.
The other is $118,618 for the negotiated agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And for engineering and architectural fees, I heard it was $388,000, but they globally put all that together with land acquisition at $900,000, and that included $388,000 for engineering and architectural. I think they're still in negotiations for the property, so I'm not sure how rigid that is. And I think later on tonight, when we're all looking at this, we all have to kind of maybe decide whether or not to recommend bonding for the land, because to reduce anything down on the town side to compensate for that might be just too catastrophic to all of our departments on the town side. So that's on that side. So Karen, it's yours now.
Okay. You want,
And the operating number we're having on our new overall valuation is 800 million. How many million? What's our valuation?
Our valuation, I think, is 814 million.
814.
Yeah, net. Yeah.
Okay.
Our gross is like 915 or 16 million.
we do know there's some buildings
Yeah,
and value to be added this coming year.
From what we see in new construction, I think we're looking at around 15 million conservatively for next year to be added on.
So for every $814,000.
$833,333.
What was that?
Well,
For every dollar,
Yeah.
it's $833,333. Is that right, Karen? For every $833,333 in the budget,
Yeah.
it adds $1 to the rate.
okay, so is it 833 or 814?
Oh, the assessment's $814 million.
They're on different funds.
That's right.
That's a piece of it.
That's
Right.
piece of it.
Well, no, but
But you've got it down to every 844,000 equals $1. I think it comes out to about 12.5 cents. Is that right?
But the assessment, Steve, was $814 million.
right.
Yes, yeah.
And what's your eight?
And what I was saying was, it appeared to me from the last, that was for every $833,000, which Andrew will revise that, adds $1 to the tax rate.
It should be every $814,000 that adds $1 to the tax rate.
I don't know.
I don't know. What is it,
I
Andrew?
think it comes out to, I've broken it down, or we broke it down backwards, I think we're about 12.5 cents.
Well, at eight,
No, but I mean-
yeah, but at 814, it's 12.28 cents.
Yeah, well, you could do, all right, so if it's 12.5 cents per 100,000, so a million is gonna be $1.20, so you back that out, and you're down to about $833,000.
Okay, so for 830, just a ballpark, $833,000 is $1.
Yeah.
Should be the same number, that's right.
Well, anyways, let's move on. Yeah.
Okay, so, I don't know if you want me to talk or. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, can we, okay, so I mean, those are the school figures that we
Right.
have for increase. What is, can you give us the gross numbers for the town?
We have a few changes that we've been working on.
Right, but-
Including some of the, like, for example, removal of the police cruiser.
So what is that? Just give us that, and then we'll go in and we'll dig into
So in
the,
total, we've removed 129,000.
130,000.
Right, 130.
Because it was very close.
Okay, so, but I guess what we want to know is what is the increase in the operating budget as it's now
is it
contemplated?
298,000?
$296,998 in the proposed budget
Yeah.
compared to 2018 approved budget. That's a 3.25% increase.
Okay, and
The default budget,
Yeah, not that it's not important, but I was just trying to get our minds around what we've been talking about, and if everything were to pass, if you would, how much money we're talking. And, so $296,998 on the operating budget. The total of the proposed warrant articles.
the town-sponsored warrant articles.
Yeah.
Do you want it after offsetting funds or before?
After offsetting.
Okay,
Yeah.
$518,500.
Okay,
We have cut considerable out of it.
okay, and I'm not questioning that.
okay, so also in the big picture, we have the offsetting funds, and I think we get confused about, some funding comes in from this reserve account, and sometimes it's because it's bonded, and sometimes it's sewer funds. So, right? And so on the offsetting funds, at some point tonight, could you just let us know which is which for these warrant articles?
Yes.
Okay,
That will be very easy this year.
thank you.
And the number of, the total dollar value of the petition warrant articles.
We have chamber warrant articles
Yeah,
that are $14,305.
yeah,
We have outside agencies on the back side of $123,776.
right.
Okay, and so all of these have actually submitted, on the petition warrant articles, have they submitted their wording and everything? I mean, they're all caught up to date on that.
We have two that we have not received the
Okay,
wording from. One is Northern Human Services. They have not submitted their petition warrant article. They're working on it. We did receive their financials.
okay.
We have Caleb Caregivers. They have not submitted their financials, and they have not dropped off their petitions.
So you don't really know for sure if
No.
they're, okay.
That is
They-
All right.
the 9th.
Right, the
8th.
8th of January.
Okay, so the show is yours, go ahead.
All right,
So is that all the numbers?
that's all the numbers.
Well, no, actually, not really. There is a question mark for negotiated agreements, 2 negotiated agreements on the town side. We have the number on the school side, but there are 2 negotiated agreements, correct?
Yes.
That we do not have a number for yet. Correct.
They're
Okay.
not finalized.
They're not finalized. I'm just saying that would be an addition on
Yeah.
top of everything
And
else.
did we do any computations at a percentage, like for a 1% negotiated agreement, the cost would be something we could extrapolate?
I don't know, do we have to do that already?
We have put out an offer, and we have not heard that it's accepted.
No, I was just saying if,
So just for your own scenarios.
yeah, if 1% would cost X, I was saying you can do the number, 1.5 would be this. If it was 1.8 by the time the school, 1%, 1.8 would be.
That's really hard to do. I don't want to get them into trouble, because if you kind
Well,
of do that,
I
no,
know-
just
I
a
know
minute.
what
If you kind of do that, then it's almost saying that this is what we're going to negotiate, or this is the max, so.
I thought that's what you would set this out for.
Well, I could appreciate that, because you want to be able to see what potential the impact could be. But it's very difficult because we're still in the
Yeah,
process
I mean,
where-
so I totally understand that from the school, being on the school board, you could not even suggest what it could be, because then you're not negotiating in
Good faith.
good faith.
You can ask a question, and say, if it was 2%, what's the impact?
Okay.
That's
2%.
what I asked.
I got a question though. According to our policy here on the board, if we don't have those numbers, or they haven't actually come forward with a petition yet, we have to put an automatic no on it. So we don't have another meeting to discuss
That is
this.
not-
We have to put an automatic no on it.
Okay.
Right.
I do know that, and I know that in past years, we've had meetings in January, and I know that this committee doesn't want to make a decision on a lot of things without having the big picture, but I think we probably have to kind of go forward, and then if the big picture in January, after all of these numbers come in, is still too much, then the committee can make a recommendation for the town or the school board to reduce their budget by X amount to come in within the margin that you all want to come in. So tonight, we really just have to keep moving forward, and then when you get that extra information, then you reassess and you can tell the town,
Yeah,
correct?
That's right, yeah. And if, let's say you don't have the information that you want and you don't feel comfortable voting, just, keep in mind that if you're unable to vote on it, then that'll just show up as a no. So, the default of not voting is a no.
The total of the warrant articles last year, either that were passed or the gross that was proposed.
It was about $10 million. We didn't have some of the bigger warrant articles that we have on here, and it didn't include a large bond, because we added to a bond.
Yeah, we did a
that we already
smaller
had.
additional bond for sub 5, but there was no.
So if we wanted to compare apples for apples, if we wanted to, on the town side, the $518,500 worth of town's warrants and warrant articles.
I would have to go back and look at what last
What the
year's
comparable
was,
number
yeah.
was to that, because we'd have to deduct that from this.
See what new monies,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
But anyway, just running rough numbers, okay? So if you take the school budget increase, the first year of the school contract, if the $900,000 you assume to be a 20-year bond at a cost of $46,800 in the first year.
That 900,000 would not be, you're talking about the school.
Yes.
That would not be a bond, that's going on a warrant
Well,
article.
no, that's what we
No, we're actually,
Yeah, I mean, no, that's what they're saying, Ralph, but that's not what's necessarily
but the
gonna happen.
reality of it is, that as a budget committee, if we feel that going for the total amount in a one-time hit is too hard of an impact on the taxpayers, we have a right to make a recommendation for them to bond it out over a period of time. We have to take everything into consideration. So for us to absorb a $900,000 hit, one-time hit on the school side, it may wreak havoc on the town side for all the reductions that we might have to make in order to do that. So we kind of have to globally look at everything together and make recommendations.
Okay. So if you take all that we currently have laid out now on the school side and on the town side, not knowing the cost of the negotiated agreements, $1,320,000, which is $1.63 on the tax rate. Okay?
Taking the 900,000 out?
Yes. Right. Putting it into a 20-year scenario.
Yeah,
Okay.
voted on.
No. I'm just trying to, get the whole picture. But you would have to take out of that whatever the warrant articles were that we passed last year. And so I'm just saying that, just so you get some sense of where we're starting.
How much was that again?
$1,320,997, and that's breaking the 900 out into a 20-year deal. So that's $1.63 on the tax rate. The 900,000 that Ralph was talking about, the 1-year land purchase, that in and of itself would have been $1.10 on the tax rate.
Okay.
So just. So
Plus everything else. So if you want to if you want to have over a $2 tax increase per thousand, then I don't know if the school would actually go forward.
Are the taxpayers going to accept a $900,000 bond over a $900,000 one-time payment over it's done for 1 year? That's when you say we'll take it out, put it in a bond, I guess I have to wonder how the taxpayers are going to feel about voting for a bond, which now needs a 60%, whereas the 900,000, which is why we recommended that, only needs a 50% vote. The chance of getting 60% vote is going to be very slim. So you're basically, by putting that in a bond, you're telling the school district you're not going to get the money you want.
Ralph, if you're ever going to build a school, if you're ever going to build a school, you're going to need a 60%.
You're going to need that in a bond.
Yeah.
So we got to get the program started, and if we get shot down the first year for a $900,000 cost, we're dead in the water. We got nowhere to go.
Well, I think we're going to have to look at it two ways tonight, and we are not going to get into discussion tonight. I think that's for Thursday.
Okay.
So 900, we can look at it, keep in the back of our minds, bond it out for 5 years, or 900,000, and what impact either one of those have on the town the things that we're reviewing tonight.
And just
I still think that's the wrong place to look at it. You got the town budget is 3.58% higher than last year's, or 3.25%. The school's one coming in with 1.2% higher. Why don't we take another 2% out of the town budget, bring that down to a 1% increase over next year?
We're trying to get there.
And not put us into a bond.
We're trying to get there.
By making that comparison, though, Ralph, I understand what you're saying, but by making that comparison, the town has been so tight on our budgeting and staying so close that any increase that we have, it's something that we're absolutely needing to do. If the school has over budgeted to the point where they only need a 1% increase, then you're penalizing the town's efforts to keep so in line with our budget that we haven't had high amounts to throw back into the general fund at the end of the year. I think there's a case for that.
So are we saying that the cost of the 900,000 or the bond would be on the shoulders of the town budget?
Well, no,
not really. The shoulders of the annual tax rate.
But it would be under the school auspices.
I think we're trying to just kind of
see where all the money's
bring everything in together. I think that's the idea of the budget committee is we're looking out for the taxpayer. And certainly when a bond or school project comes forward, it's big time. It's huge. And so it does fall onto some of the cost falls onto the side of the town because we all have to work together to get it. But we don't want to penalize them so much, the town side, that I really think a $900,000 hit in 1 year would really penalize the town side.
Which is, for the average homeowner, $188, which is Ralph, which, and I may be out of order as far
No,
as.
you're
not.
So you don't, so, quick and dirty figures. $900,000 one time, that's $108, $181 on the tax bill. Is that better than 10 cents on the tax rate?
And I understand where Ralph is coming from in the sense that he's saying a 50%, or, you know, just a simple majority instead of a 60%.
The school, when it comes to the Lakeway Elementary School, the town has never hit a 60% bond vote, except for the CTC and the high school. Never hit a 60% for the elementary school.
But
No,
I'm just saying,
and
be
it-
open to it.
And it took us 2 years to hit it for the police department, and 2 years to hit it, or 3, sorry.
3 years.
And how many years to hit it for the highway department?
And
2,
how long have
anyway.
they been working on the
2.
school? Since 2008.
Yeah, and like Brian says, this will be
And how much
3
money
times
is
the size of anything we've ever done.
For what?
For the school that they want to build. It's been going on for almost 10 years. How much money have they put into a CIP? How much money has the school set aside?
Where are they gonna come up with the money set aside when we keep
They
keeping the
turn
budget
back
down?
$500,000 every
To the-
year.
For the tax purposes,
Right.
yes.
But if they
No,
sat
they
there,
didn't last year. No, they
but
did
if they
not.
sat there and told the taxpayer, we're gonna set this money aside in a CIP because we know we have to build a school, we have to do renovations, for the most part, the taxpayer would go, okay, that makes sense.
What about
So they wouldn't be asking for 18 million, they may only be asking for 10.
school aid and the fact that that'll be, so that it's spread?
Okay,
There's
so
no
I just
planning.
want to throw this other thing out there, and then we kind of have to start going through the warrant articles. So the other consideration of bonding it is, everyone has asked and mentioned that perhaps school aid will be coming back, building aid. And yeah, perhaps, but no one is really depending on it. So, but if it does come back and we've bonded, then the taxpayer, if they pay it all in one chunk this year, they don't have anything offsetting from the building aid to offset that impact. Over 5 years, I'm hoping building aid is back by that time. They would reap the benefit of the building aid directly onto what they're already paying. So, I mean, that's another thing, another way to look at it. But I don't want to hijack this just for the school. We need to get through this right now. So go ahead. Where do you want to start, Mr. Chairman?
Well, we already started where I wanted to start, and I hope that was worthwhile doing that.
Yeah.
I have some
It was
numbers
very
for
helpful
that.
to hear all that.
Okay,
Yeah.
the town warrant articles that it does not include the fire department truck because that was a grant. Does not include sewer system upgrade or Foster Hill because Foster Hill was a financed item and the sewer upgrade is not part of the operating cost.
It's
of
paid
the
for
town.
out of the change in sewer fees.
Yes.
Yeah,
So, 223,000 for the town
yeah,
that you need to minus off.
yeah.
Plus the outside agencies,
Yeah.
a rough guess, it was about 140,000, which is close to what
Yeah.
you have there.
Yeah, okay,
We
yeah.
basically have, seems like the same numbers constantly.
Yeah.
So those numbers should be pulled out of that.
Yeah, okay, so
amount.
if you take that out of there, then we're down to,
So you're trying,
we're down to roughly 960,000.
you're trying to find out
Yeah.
what new money,
Yeah.
right? Is that
Right,
what it
yeah.
is?
We're about $1.18 on the tax rate when you do that adjustment.
And that includes, just recap what that includes.
That includes the LHS budget increase, the first year of the LHS teacher's contract, or whichever contract that is. That's assuming a 20-year bond on the $900,000 instead of the 1-year payment. It's a $296,000 of town operating budget increase, $518,500 worth of town-sponsored warrant articles, the $14,305 for the Chamber of Commerce, and $123,776 outside agencies. The total of all that would have been $1,320,000. Basically, we're taking off of that about $363,000, so basically coming down to $960,000. So $1.18 on the tax rate if all of that passed. And the other little flying ointment too is, you never know, obviously the school, as they've fine-tuned their budget more, the turn back to the town has been less. We're not gonna be seeing any more $500,000 or $700,000 turn back. This past year was
About 150,000, they kept 150,000.
That's right, yeah, so, anyway, that's just for, to get your mind around, what we're talking. I just don't wanna see us charge through the whole thing and then get to the end of it and have sticker shock. At least you know, if you voted for everything that's being presented to us, or has been presented to us thus far, that's what you're talking for a tax rate.
Do you want to go through what changes in the proposed budget that you have come up with?
Yes. I'm just taking charge.
Go for it, yeah.
Nobody's ever held you back before.
Oh, yeah. Can we take a pause or something for this?
Yeah.
Anybody want to take a pause yet?
And then reconvene in 10 minutes?
Can we have,
Whichever is fine.
Let's do that, yeah. Restroom break.
Excuse me.
Did you bring the root beer?
Was that $1? Did you say that was $1.18?
$1.18.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there's pizza over there.